Hello friends, today you will hear another tragic story from Everest, and the hero of this dark saga is the Hungarian mountaineer Szilárd Suhajda. In 2023, Everest witnessed a record number of tragedies. 18 climbers remained forever on its icy slopes. What could be the reason for such a surge in deaths? You will find the answer to this question in a separate video on the channel. Be sure to watch it to understand the context of today's story. Szilárd Suhajda, a 40-year-old Hungarian mountaineer, was no newcomer to the world of high-altitude climbing. In 2014, he conquered Broad Peak, a mountain 8,051 meters high. In 2019, he became the first Hungarian to climb K2, the formidable peak standing at 8,611 meters. Both of these summits are known for their technical difficulty and treachery, but Szilárd managed to scale them without the help of Sherpas or oxygen tanks. These feats made him a legend in mountaineering circles, but Szilárd was not one to rest on his laurels. In 2022, he solo climbed Lhotz, a mountain 8,516 meters high, again without oxygen or support. This man was the embodiment of strength and courage, one of Hungary's greatest climbers. In the spring of 2023, Szilárd arrived at the base of Everest. This time he planned to undertake a climb that few would even dare to imagine without oxygen, without Sherpa support, and without guides. This ambitious decision was both dangerous and deadly. At high altitudes, the air is thin and the oxygen content is extremely low. Altitude sickness, the severe stage of which can lead to pulmonary or cerebral edema, is a common cause of climbers' deaths. Most climbers ascend 8,000ers with oxygen masks and tanks to compensate for the lack of oxygen. They rely on the help of Sherpas and guides who often save lives by assisting in descents from dangerous heights. But not Szilárd. He decided to rely solely on his own strength. Despite the fact that 1 in 5 oxygen-free climbs ends in the climber's death, he forged ahead. Everest, like a living entity, watched over him. This cold giant, woven from ice and silence, had seen countless lives sacrificed for a chance to reach its summit. Szilárd walked its icy paths as if on the edge of a knife. The wind, moaning and howling in the mountains, seemed like the whispers of ghosts, those who could not return. And perhaps Everest didn't care how many lives would be lost on its slopes. It remained indifferent, cold, and eternal. On May 24, 2023, Szilárd Suhajda, the Hungarian mountaineer, began his ascent towards the summit of Everest, but his belongings, jacket, and tent were found at an altitude of only 6,500 meters, just above the second camp. Ordinary climbers start from the assault camp at an altitude of about 8,000 meters. Starting from such a low altitude was a strange and dangerous decision, especially without oxygen and support. But Szilárd, persistent and determined, continued to climb. On Everest, cold and silent as death itself, every movement seems like a challenge to fate. The mountain, like an ancient guardian spirit, watches those who dare to challenge it. That day, it was especially calm, giving Szilárd the illusion that he could handle it. But Everest had its own plans for those who attempted to conquer it. At 7:30 a.m., climber Ben Ferrar, returning from the summit of Everest, encountered Szilárd just below a place called the Balcony. Szilárd was sitting holding some device in his hands. Ferrar took a photograph, not knowing it would be the last photo of Szilárd. He looked very tired, Ferrar later recounted. I assumed he was going to turn around. We briefly greeted each other. I asked how he was, and he said he was fine. That day, the conditions for climbing were ideal: warm weather, few people on the mountain, no clouds and no wind. But in the photograph, Szilárd was without gloves, which at such an altitude and temperature was a recipe for frostbite. His actions were becoming increasingly irrational. He did not start descending as Ferrar had assumed, but continued to climb slowly. This determination could be called madness, but perhaps that was where his true strength lay. Another team, consisting of Lee Saikali from Canada and Yusuf Al-Shati from Kuwait, was climbing without supplemental oxygen, accompanied by a Sherpa guide. They did not reach the summit and were forced to turn back. At an altitude of about 8,400 meters, around 4:30 a.m., they met Szilárd. He was moving slowly but inexorably upward. Descending back around 1:30 p.m., they crossed paths with him again. Szilárd was still above the balcony but had not progressed much further. He seemed to be sleepwalking, caught in an icy nightmare, unable to stop. Szilárd took a photo of the place where they crossed paths. Szilárd Suhajda, a determined man, was cut from a different cloth than the others. He continued his ascent, even though each step brought him closer to the infinite silence. The last signal from Szilárd Suhajda's GPS device came on May 25th. At an altitude of 8,870 meters near the Hillary Step, his strength finally gave out, and he found himself in a cold bivouac at a tremendous height. There he was seen. The emerging Nepal team, the last on Everest that season, encountered him. Mingma Dorji, their leader, reported that one of the groups of Sherpas was accompanying a 60-year-old Chinese woman who had reached the Hillary Step, but could not go any higher and had to descend. Not far from her they saw Szilárd lying off the route. He was not attached to the fixed rope, and was clearly suffering from cerebral edema caused by a lack of oxygen. He was barely showing signs of life. The emerging Nepal team was the last who could help him. But they did not. Szilárd lay too far from the route, and attempting to pull him out threatened the lives of the Sherpas themselves. Moreover, they were bringing down the exhausted elderly Chinese woman suffering from snow blindness. The woman was also on the brink of life and death. The decision was made. Szilárd remained on the mountain. Every climber who ascends into the death zone above 8,000 meters knows they might not return. Szilárd, like many before him, knew this, but no one expected the end to be like this. Imagine an icy hell. At an altitude of 8,870 meters, the air is so thin that each breath feels like a blow to the lungs. Around there is absolute silence, broken only by the howling wind. Here, at this merciless height, Szilárd lay, struggling for every breath, his mind blurring in the haze caused by lack of oxygen. The Sherpas, accompanied by the dying Chinese woman, passed by. They saw him, knew he was alive, but could not help. In their eyes, it was tantamount to suicide. Saving one could mean the death of others. The decision was terrible, but in these mountains, moral dilemmas often die under the weight of harsh reality. But Szilárd did receive an attempt at rescue. One of Nepal's best rescue teams was dispatched to find him. The team included Gelji Sherpa and Mingma Sherpa, renowned for their feats on K2 and Dhaulagiri, as well as one of Nepal's top pilots, Simone Moro, who flew them to Camp 2 at 6,400 meters. By 10 a.m. on May 26th, they started their ascent. The team reached Camp 4 at 7,950 meters in just 7 hours. There, a fourth Sherpa and a cook assistant were waiting, preparing food and melting snow for water. After a short rest, they set off for the south summit, at an altitude of 8,750 meters, hoping to save Szilárd. However, upon reaching the summit, they found no one. Szilárd had disappeared. Gelji Sherpa recounted, "We spent hours searching the vast area around the Hillary Step. We ascended and descended multiple times between 8,750 and 8,848 meters. We hoped to find any trace of Szilárd, but all was in vain." What really happened? It is evident that cerebral edema caused by lack of oxygen and altitude sickness deprived Szilárd of his judgment. He continued to climb even when it was clear that the summit was unattainable. He should have descended with Saikali's group, but he was alone, without oxygen, without Sherpa support, and there was no one to turn him back. Everest, cold and indifferent, watched this unfold. Szilárd, trudging through the icy wasteland, was like a ghost lost in the snow. The mountain, like an ancient monstrous guardian, absorbed his strength, froze his will. The wind howled like the voices of ancient spirits, carrying away Szilárd's last hopes. Everest, grim and unyielding, remained indifferent. It embraced yet another brave soul in its cold grasp, turning him into a legend, a whisper in the wind, a shadow among the icy cliffs. If this story touched you, leave your thoughts in the comments below the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's easy for you, and it would mean a lot to me. Share this video with your friends. Together we can conquer any peak. Thank you for your support.